Welcome to the Wolverine Digest podcast, the best spot for objective and authentic coverage of Michigan athletics. If you want open dialogue, honest opinions, and in-depth coverage of the maize and blue, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's your host, Brandon Brown, joined as always by Chris Bradler.
I just want to start by saying go blue.
Well, the fight song has made a triumphant return. Talked about it on Monday. You know, the Penn State game was weird, super weird. I was on the show with Jamie today and kind of going through it over again in my head, like the lines, like JJ 7 for 8, 60 yards. Colston Loveland, I think, had one catch. Roman Wilson, I don't know if he was even targeted. He had no catches on the day. Yes. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards got going a little bit, scored 3 touchdowns, ran for over 200 yards total. But I think if you had looked at just those numbers, you would have thought Michigan lost for sure. Or JJ got hurt or something. I mean, like, the numbers were just so crazy, yet Michigan manages to win by 9 without Harbaugh at Penn State. Huge target on their back, all the above. So it just kind of got me looking again like, I guess, Chris, we both agree that Sherrone Moore's the man. Like, he's ready to be a head coach. So it's not like crazy that he did a good job. And then this team has a bunch of veterans and a lot of leadership and a lot of really good dudes who are keeping things, you know, kind of under control. But the more and more I've thought about that game and how good I do think Penn State actually is, especially on defense with NFL dudes at multiple levels, how improbable actually like was that win. Now that we're starting to turn the page, we're looking at Maryland a little bit more now, but to put a bow on it, like, did Michigan actually have any business winning that game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, prior to the season, I spent a lot of time talking about this game in particular. I actually picked them to lose this game before the season started. I just had a hard time predicting that they would go back-to-back undefeated seasons in conference play. But as the season went on, it became apparent that I think Penn State wasn't quite as good as maybe we had anticipated going into the year. That isn't to take away anything from them. They're a tremendous team. Anytime you go play in Happy Valley, like that's a very tough place to win a football game. But Drew Aller hasn't been as good as I thought it was going to be. I viewed him as an elite quarterback coming into the year. I think he's, it's clear that he's got some talent, but there's still some growth that needs to happen there. And then on the flip side, the Michigan Wolverines were completely dominant through the first 9 weeks of the season, and the constant, rebuttal or talking point from critics out there was, but who have they played? Nobody on the schedule, like not an impressive opponent. Wait till they play a ranked opponent. Well, on Saturday they played a top 10 opponent, and I mean, they did what they have done all season long, which is completely dominate their opponent in the trenches. And did it look pretty on the scoreboard? No. But if you listen to people who know about the game of football, it's very clear that everybody is in agreement that Michigan completely dominated that game. When you go 2.5 quarters, when you finish an entire game against the number 1 rush defense in the country, running it 32 consecutive times, that to me is about as dominant as a performance as you'll see out of a football team. And, hats off to Sherrone Moore and the job he did. And, I think it was Joel Klatt pointed it out, a couple other analysts, like he knew pretty early on what the tone of the game was going to be like, what it was going to take to win. And he talked about it today during the press conference. Not only did he realize it, but everybody on the team knew. They knew that they were in control. They knew that they were going to win that game, and they knew what it was going to take. And guys like J.J. McCarthy and wide receivers, Roman Wilson and the tight ends, everybody bought in to the Michigan game plan, and it was a beautiful thing to watch play out. Again, not flashy. You're not watching Pac-12 after hours. You're not watching 63, 55 double overtime. You're just watching a dominant team that knows how to win football games, go out and handle its business on the road. So I thought it was impressive, and certainly Michigan had every business to win that, or all the business, however you want to put it. Michigan deserved to win that game, hands down. I mean, they are the better team.
Yeah, and I mean it comes back to complementary football and trusting your defense and winning the field position battle and taking a bunch of time off the clock because you're not afraid of Penn State's offense whatsoever. And yeah, it resulted in a coach losing his job. It was to that degree. Yeah, we talked about it on Monday where I used the word dominant, and of course, Penn State fans on Twitter were like, "Dominant? Let me show you this. Let me show you this drive chart." And I'm like, "Well, okay, yeah, Michigan didn't run the ball to the point of scoring touchdowns every game, but they did exactly what they wanted to."
Wouldn't you say it's almost more dominant if you don't have to score on every possession because your defense is going to prevent or the other side from putting any points on the ball? I mean, that to me is like the ultimate sign of dominance. Like, we're going to pound it away, and if we need to punt it, we'll punt it. Like, we're not worried about what you're going to do offensively. Like, that to me is a stronger signal of dominance than, fuck, we got to score every time we get the ball because we know these guys are going to respond.
Yeah, that's it's an unorthodox form of dominance. I mean, any football team would say, well, we'd rather score a touchdown than punt it back to them. For sure. But I think you said an interesting word there, worry. And there was none. There was no worry from Michigan that what they were doing wouldn't work, or else they wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have run it 30 times in a row.
If they were worried, you would have seen the offense operate a little bit differently. I think it wasn't a coincidence that Michigan just ran it 32 times straight. It wasn't that they were afraid of letting JJ McCarthy throw the ball around the field. It was just they knew that was going to work. And if they had to punt the ball away, they knew the defense was going to keep Penn State from scoring. And so, again, to me, like, sure, if you're scoreboard watching and looking in the stat sheet, you might say, it's not that dominant. But everybody who was there, who understands a game of football, knows full well what they saw on Saturday, and it was complete dominance by the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah, I mean, it was a throwback. It was a service academy type of game, however you want to classify it. Yeah, the stat lines are weird looking, very weird. And like I said, if I had seen just those after the game was over, I would have thought Michigan had a rough day. Now, if you look at Penn State's, it kind of starts to come back to earth a little bit. But if you looked at just Michigan stats and didn't know how the game ended, JJ's line, Colston Loveland, non-existent. Roman Wilson, non-existent completely. I think Colston had one catch maybe, but I needed him to get 25 yards for my bet, so I know he didn't get that. I thought he was going to have a big day. Roman Wilson has had a big day every week out. And JJ had been winging it around a little bit, threw for 335 the previous week against Purdue. So, yeah, I think looking at those numbers, you'd have been like, damn, what happened in this game? It's just it's a game. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. Never seen a game like that before. 32 runs in a row, and it leads to a pretty easy win at the end of the day. Again, a late touchdown. I'm not going to quite go garbage time touchdown, but a late touchdown for Penn State to make it even look remotely respectable. So there you go. Anyway, remember everybody, it is Wednesday. So if you have questions, let them fly. I'm seeing a lot of comments and a lot of things being said, but if you've got questions, we'll take them. And Chris and I are going to do our burning questions today since we did not get to them on Monday. So I don't know if we start seeing a bunch of questions fly in, we'll start taking them. But if not, we'll, I guess we can launch into our questions. Chris, are you ready? Do you have some at the ready for tonight? Or
I'm ready to go. I am ready.
All right, let's do this then. I'm going to start off with our burning questions, and I'll ask this one that I have first because it's actually, I didn't even do this on purpose, but it's kind of similar to what I just asked you and what we just talked about. So with Michigan winning 24-15, running the ball 30 times, JJ's number looking like he got knocked out in the first quarter because of how many times he threw it and for how little yards, and the receivers not being involved, et cetera, et cetera. Are you okay with it? I mean, obviously the win, yes, but are you completely fine sleeping like a baby at night because of the way Michigan handled their business? Or would you have liked to see a little bit more of a balanced attack, dominant win? Because, if Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, going to go to the playoff, win a couple more games, and ultimately win a title, will this kind of thing work?
I'm completely fine with it. If you had asked me 50 different scenarios that could play out that would equate to a Michigan W in Happy Valley last weekend, I would have been just fine with every single one of them. And so I'm totally fine with the way Michigan went about their business. And like I said, the more I think about it and the more I've had time to process what we saw on Saturday and, being down on the field and feeling the energy at the beginning of the game. And then it got to a point pretty early on where I just didn't feel at any point Michigan was at risk of losing that game. And I think that Michigan certainly felt that. I think a lot of people in that stadium certainly felt it. And I'm not going to do the thing that we tend to do, or we have done and guilty of doing the last 2 years, which is, at some point you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z if you want to win at the highest level. Like, I think this Michigan football team is pretty damn good, and you can't underestimate how important this is. They understand what it's going to take to win from week to week. Not every opponent is the same. Not every game plan is going to be the same. And they knew what it was going to take to win in Happy Valley, and they executed it to perfection. And so I'm completely fine with what I saw on Saturday.
And you know what? The thing that I'm with you. I am too. You and I have come a long way, Chris, because this would not have flown a year and a half ago with 8 throws in the game.
There'd be a lot of complaining.
But no, I'm with you. I'm fine with it now. And I think one thing that makes me even more fine with it is you could make an argument that that's the best defense Michigan's going to play, no matter how it shakes out for the rest of the way with the Ohio State, the Big Ten title game in the playoff. Penn State's defense is as good as anybody that they will see. And they did that against them in their house without Jim Harbaugh on the side. I just can't. I'm not sure people, because it was kind of boring and there wasn't a lot of points. I think people are kind of losing a little bit just how like crazy that approach is, and that it worked, and that they were able to do that against that team.
I mean, it's the equivalent of Tom Brady deciding he's going to throw 2.5 quarters with his left hand. You know what I mean? Like, just deciding like this is what I'm going to do because we're not worried about it. So yeah, I again, there's a lot of outside noise and a lot of people moving the goalposts based on what they saw on Saturday, and that, well, how impressive of a win was it, or how good is Penn State really? At the end of the day, what Michigan did, if you understand the game, you were there, you watched it, you understood what was happening. To run it 32. Could Ohio State run it 32 straight times against Penn State and get a W in Columbus? I don't think so. You need Marvin Harrison Jr. You need other elements. Michigan didn't need that. They went one-dimensional. Sherrone Moore said it. Got big, played tough in the trenches, got the job done. Like, that's about as impressive as a win. And Jim Harbaugh said it, and there's no doubt that he's guilty of hyperbole and over-exaggeration from time to time, but that, as a fan, as somebody who just loves the football program, that is one of the more impressive wins I can remember in recent history. Yeah,
it's unique. I mean, everybody. I think it was. I don't know if his last name is just Pate or if it's Pate or Patty or whatever.
Hey.
He's an analyst, I think, for 247 or CBS. Maybe Josh Pate or Josh Pate. He has a really good podcast. I actually like him. He's got a pretty sensible approach. He said. So Michigan decided to close out the game with these play calls. Here we go. Run. Yeah. He did it for 32 times in a row. And it was just like, dude, this is such a crazy way to win such a big game. And I don't know, because the way Michigan's ran the ball the last couple of years, maybe Michigan fans are just kind of like, yeah, I could see it. It's not normal. It's just not. So there you go.
Well, I guess my first question is going to be somewhat in line with what you just asked, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your biggest takeaway from Michigan's win on Saturday? Based on everything we've seen, now that we've had a couple days to digest it, what's your biggest takeaway? Whether it's Penn State related, Michigan related, what's the biggest takeaway from that game on Saturday?
I mean, a couple of the things I keep saying is I do have a lot of respect for Penn State's defense. They have 3 edge rushers that made things really, really tough on JJ and the tackles trying to block them. Abdul Carter, the super speedy linebacker in the middle, and then Kalen King. Like, they've got a similar kind of makeup when you look at their defense to Michigan, like a few guys at each level that are star players and are going to be playing on Sunday. And again, that just reiterates how impressive it was that Michigan was able to do what they did. I guess my biggest takeaway is still one of the things that I've been super impressed with Michigan since Jim Harbaugh has had this staff is the way that they adjust. They just find what they need to do. They execute it perfectly, and they do it, whether it's on defense, which maintained, again, no points given up in the third quarter, the only school in the country to do that now at this point. Penn State was the other one, and Michigan got a field goal on them in the third quarter. And then obviously the runs, just the runs in the second half. I mean, I don't know if they went into halftime and Sherrone said, we're not throwing it again. Like, I don't think he did that, but at some point he realized, like, this shit's working. We don't need to do anything else. And they just kept doing it, and the players executed it, and they get out of there with a win. So I think it's the adjustment, the execution, and then how it looks out on the field, which has now been just wins for 3 seasons in a row. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, biggest takeaway for me, and we've kind of seen it throughout the season where, there's some times that Michigan leans pretty heavily on the run. There's other times that they go to the air with J.J. McCarthy, and he leads the way. And this win by any means necessary mentality is more than just a talking point. It's a reality. And I go back to the press conference. I don't know how many weeks ago it was, but I think it was when Jim Harbaugh was still serving his 3-game suspension to start the year. And, there was criticism about how much Michigan was winning by. And he said, essentially, like, look, we don't care if we win by 100 or 1 point. And, guys like us were like, well, you obviously want to win by more than 1 point. You want to put more points on the board. But at the end of the day, I really don't think they care. I don't think they care. As long as they get out with a W, I think they're perfectly content. And to me, my takeaway is that they seem pretty damn good at understanding the opponent, understanding the situation, and excelling within that, and getting other teams to play their brand of football. They don't get roped into playing somebody else's style. When you play against Michigan, you're going to have to play Michigan's brand of football in order to win. And I give the advantage to Michigan every single time in that scenario.
The only time they've had to do that in a long time
I'm on the Facebook spam, by the way. I'll take care of it here.
Was against TCU. TCU switched them up and made them do some things that they normally didn't really want to do, and obviously that resulted in a loss. So you're right. They have a way. You hear about that in basketball. You hear about it in football. You hear about it in all sports. But Michigan is really, really good at it, at doing what they want, regardless of what that other team's going to do. And that was a prime example, because early on, Penn State had to be loving the pressure they were getting on JJ and how they were beating those tackles off the edge with their talented edge rushers. And so it kind of reminded me of the Waterboy. You remember the Waterboy when the coach of the other really good team was like, how do you like my new offense? He just took a knee every time and punted it back to the other team. Yeah. It was close to that. Like the Waterboy's not going to be making plays because he's never going to even get a chance to. So we're just going to kick it to their offense because they can't do anything. That wasn't quite that bad, but pretty close. Yeah, it was really impressive.
You know what? And I have noticed this ever since this whole goddamn Connor Stallion sign stealing fiasco thing has come out. Michigan versus these fucking t-shirt bots on Twitter, on Facebook. Like, no matter what it is you post, there's these you get like 10 responses from people that are like trying to sell t-shirts now. It's some bullshit scheme. I don't know what Elon Musk is doing over there at Twitter or X or whatever the hell you call it these days. Or the gentleman that runs, what the fuck is his name? Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know what they're doing, but these t-shirt bots are out of control. Forget politics, forget disinformation out there. We need to address the t-shirt bots.
Striking while the iron's hot, man. That's what it is. They're programmed to do it.
I mean, they're relentless.
All right, my next question is directly from words out of Jim Harbaugh's mouth. He referred to Michigan, Chris, as America's team. I just want to know, do you? And look, he's poking the bear a little bit. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I put an article up about it today, dude. 9.2 million people watched that Michigan-Penn State game, which was almost double the next closest game. So in some sense of the word, he's right. People in America are paying attention to Michigan football, and they want to see what happens. Sure, there's probably some reasons for that aren't normally there, but it is what it is. Do you think that the group is bigger for liking Michigan or hating Michigan at this point?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. It's a bigger group that hates Michigan. I mean, I think that was the case before. Oh my God! Listen, the t-shirt bots. I am trying my hardest. They are filling the comment section here. Every time I delete and ban one, another one pops up. So bear with me here while I answer Brandon's question and take care of this at the same time. No, I think even before this happened, most people hate the Michigan Wolverines. I just think it's one of those brands where, it's like Duke, it's like Notre Dame. Like if you're not part of it, if you're not, already a fan, like it's a team that you look at and you hate and you want to see them lose.
The Yankees,
Correct.
the Lakers, the Red
Correct.
Sox.
And to a certain extent, that's pretty damn good company to be in if you think about it, be associated with those types of brands. But yeah, at the end of the day, his America's team thing, I think was more of a, Jim Harbaugh just sort of, he knew what he was doing when he said it. I don't think that he meant it sincerely necessarily. But I certainly think the group that hates Michigan is far larger than the group that loves Michigan from a national standpoint.
I agree with you. I think you're right. I mean, it's like that with every popular big brand. Like they've got their loyal fan base, which is usually huge. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Lakers are huge, the Yankees are huge, the Cowboys are like that's one of the reasons why all the other people don't like them. It's because they're bigger, they've been around longer, they have this history of winning, they've got whatever. There's a various amount of reasons why they get like that, but it's been interesting because I do think some people have kind of like changed their tune just a little bit. Most people thought it was absolute bullshit that Harbaugh got suspended while on the plane on the way to the game. And people kind of almost said like, you know what? I want Michigan to win now. I heard a couple people on TV talk about it. And then, the fact that there really hasn't been anything found out about Harbaugh himself, people are kind of like, he's getting screwed a little bit. And we've talked about it before. A lot of football dudes and guys who played football are like, this isn't even a big deal. Why are they treating him like he's the worst criminal in the history of college sports? So I agree. Like the group that hates Michigan and wanted them to lose that game to Penn State is much bigger. But I do think there are some people that are looking at this and changing their tune a little bit where maybe a couple weeks ago they were like, nah, bury him, do this, do that. As more and more has come out, more and more people have realized that Connor Stallions was kind of acting like a psycho on his own. And even more evidence to support that today, by the way. No expense reports to speak of whatsoever. So it does look like he was funding it completely on his own without any knowledge going back to the school or anybody else or other staffers or whatever. So anyway, you got to love Harbaugh putting something like that out there with a big old smile on his face. Like you said, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Speaking of Jim Harbaugh, and obviously we're going to speculate here. Neither one of us are legal experts, I would say at this point, but he is set to appear in court on Friday. And according to what he said on Monday, he's planning on speaking. From what I've heard since then, there's a good chance he might not even be at the courthouse, that others are going to speak on his behalf. But he said that he wants to go in, he wants to speak. He mentioned the Judge Judy thing, mentioned that he always wanted to be a lawyer sort of thing. I got to imagine that's like must-see TV, watching Jim Harbaugh represent himself against the Big Ten. But I'm going to ask you point blank, do we see Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines this Saturday?
I had this question too. I mean, this is an obvious one going into the game this weekend. So, I mean, from my understanding of how it's going to work, it felt more like a technicality than something he had to win. And I could be, again, we don't know shit about this stuff. Like I do not. I don't know the legal system. This is even a weirder. I mean, it's not even like it's not a crime. This is like a special, sporting NCAA, blah blah blah, Big Ten. It's strange all around. But it sounded like as long as they had this injunction in place and it was presented in a certain way at a certain time and had the certain elements to it, that it would block whatever punishment he was going to get. So like, I've just it couldn't happen in time, obviously, because of when he was suspended for Penn State. But now they had this whole week and Friday was the day and here's what it's going to be. And yeah, I kind of do feel like he's going to be there on Saturday. And I might be completely wrong on that. But that's how it's felt to me, at least when it was explained, like what exactly was going to happen during the court date on Friday. So I'll say yes, but it's just a guess at this point. This whole thing has been weird.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other side. I'm going to say no. Okay. And I say that as someone who's not a legal expert, and it's probably my fault for not, trying to get some clarity on this. And maybe there's I don't know if there's somebody who has expertise in this field watching our show, like God bless you. I don't know what you're doing, but I don't know. Even if a judge who loves the University of Michigan, loves Jim Harbaugh, might even be a Michigan alum, grants the injunction or the temporary restraining order, I don't like. I'm not even sure. Does the Big Ten have to adhere to that? And how does all that work? Like, to me, the idea that he can go into court, get an injunction, and show up on the sideline, even when the Big Ten said in their statement, like, this is non-negotiable, like you are suspended for the 3 games of the regular season. There might be more. I don't know how all of that works. And so even if the injunction is granted, I could see it being more of a symbolic, like, hey, the legal aspect of this is on our side, and that'll play into how, Michigan goes up against the Big Ten moving forward. But man, I would be surprised if Jim Harbaugh is on the sidelines this Saturday. Would love to see it because, man, you listen to Mike Elston talk about it. You listen to Sherrone Moore talk about it today. The disappointment that they feel in the idea that Jim Harbaugh might not be on the sidelines for Michigan when they get 1,000 wins. I think everybody feels that, man. He has been, regardless of what you think of him, even if you were part of the crowd that was calling for him to be fired after 2020, I reluctantly raised my hand as being part of that crowd. I just thought the program wasn't headed in the right direction, had, no success against Ohio State. It felt like he had been given enough time to turn it around, and he didn't. And he weathered the storm. He brought the right people in, got the right staff in place, recruited the right guys, completely turned this program around, has been such a critical part of Michigan's success. And to see him not be on the sidelines for Michigan to reach just a tremendous milestone in college football history, I think would be an absolute shame. So would love for nothing more than to see him coaching the team on Saturday, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I do remember having the same kind of thought that you just said where, Michigan, Harbaugh, judges, lawyers file some paperwork and the Big Ten's like, damn it, they did it. And they're just like, their hands are just tied and Harbaugh gets to come back. I do remember thinking like, that just doesn't sound right. Like, why would that be a thing? Yeah.
And then
why would that be a thing?
If you're Mike Locksley in Maryland, and I'm sure that they're very much excited to play Michigan. Mike Locksley said, it's a tremendous opportunity, but I mean, if you're the opposing Big Ten school that Michigan's going to face, and Jim Harbaugh's roaming the sideline, and the conference has said he's not supposed to be there, like, what happens if you choose just not to take the field? Does the Big Ten step in and issue a forfeit for Michigan? Like, I don't know, man. I just feel like I feel like the Big Ten didn't go into this without the expectation that Michigan was going to fight it and having a backup plan in the event that happened. And so the idea that the Big Ten would issue a suspension, Michigan could go to court and fight it and just have it be null and void until the offseason, to me seems, I don't know, man, it seems a little bit too convenient. Again, would love to absolutely see it, but
yeah, it's
just again, we've never seen anything like this. And so
that's it.
The idea that anybody knows how it would play out is, you're guessing at this point.
That's why I said, I'm like, I'll just guess yes, because they're obviously going to do some work. They've been preparing for it. They've had this in place since before he was even suspended on Friday. There just wasn't enough time to get it rolling by then. I'm just thinking like they must, like the lawyers and the judges and the people working on Harbaugh's behalf must kind of have a feel for this. And if they're going to do this and take it right up to Friday again before a game, they must feel like they're going to accomplish something, right? I mean, maybe not. Maybe they don't. Maybe they know like this is a losing battle, but we got to try. So again, I don't know enough about how it all works or who these people are that are involved or exactly what's going to go on inside that room. But my cousin Vinny is a lawyer. Fantastic reference, Mike. Thank you for that.
Great movie.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. Your guess is my guess. My guess is yours. It's I would, for him to not be there would blow. I mean,
yeah.
I think I'm going to lead this right into my next question, actually. For Michigan to be going for win 1,000, and on Monday, Harbaugh said, the Packers have the most ever in the NFL. It's like 780 or something. And then Valdosta High School has the most ever for a high school program. It was 951. Because you really don't think about total wins in a program very often. It just doesn't come up that much. Michigan coined, the winningest program in football history. So Michigan fans are well aware that they have more than anybody else, but I don't think people really pay attention to the number all that much. But when everybody started to realize that the 1,000th win could come during week 11 against Maryland, sandwiched in between Penn State and Ohio State, makes it kind of cool. It's special. Like none of us are going to be here for win 2000. So like, this is a big deal. And, if Harbaugh's not able to be there for that, it does suck. It also sucks that it's happening on the road. It would be really cool if it happened at home. I'm sure they'd have a lot of stuff going on if they were doing that. But it's still a monster.
It's better than win 1,000. Win 1,001.
Well, that's very fair. That will be at home. Yeah. So it's a really cool milestone, a really cool mark, and yeah, it would be really unfortunate if Jim Harbaugh's not there for it. So my question then is, based on what I said about the Packers number and the high school number and the fact that it's coming against Maryland, it's on the road. You just said 1,001 is going to be bigger. How big of a deal is 1,000 to you? As a Michigan fan, we've heard winningest forever. It's always been part of their tagline. Like, how big of a deal do you see Saturday being when they can chalk up win number 1,000?
I mean, it's huge. I mean, they every win they've had, they've made college football history by, becoming the most winningest program. But I think when you get to a number like 1,000, it's like, when you hit the year 2000, you just, it's a big change. It's a noticeable milestone. And I think, it's college football history. It's something that I think, to your point, none of us are going to be here to see win number 2000, to see them sort of turn that mark and become, the first program to do it. I just think it's an incredible milestone and something that, from a personal standpoint, I can't wait to witness it and see it in person. I mean, it was that important to me. I've been thinking about this a lot, and we've talked about making the trip out to Maryland, and I think last I checked, Michigan is a 21-point favorite, and the game itself isn't expected to be close. Now I know that Maryland can present some problems, but Mike Elston talked about that a little bit today, and when he was asked about whether or not Maryland was a trap game, or if he even subscribes to trap games, and he said, not with this squad, not with this group. There's too many veterans. These guys are too motivated. These guys want to win, and you can't be 12-0 unless you're 11-0, and they understand that. And then you throw on top of that, this incredible milestone that they're going to bring back to Ann Arbor. I think it is a huge deal, and it's something that I'm very excited to see and hopefully be a part of.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, I found it interesting that Harbaugh had those numbers about the Packers and the high school team. I was like, wow, Michigan really does have more wins than any other entity playing the sport. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a big deal. Again, the fact that Harbaugh might not be there in person to be a part of it is a shame. But it's his handprints are all over that. He'll be able to. We've talked a lot about Harbaugh's kind of an aloof guy, and does he care about anything? I bet he cares about that. I don't know how he could not.
I don't know. Not if you take him at his word on what he said on Monday. And I think that was one of the parts of the press conference that I felt like didn't get a lot of coverage that probably should have. I've got it on video. I might put it on social just so people can see it. But somebody asked him a question about that, about like his emotions about potentially missing that, or not, being suspended, or not coaching against Ohio State. And he said something like, I just think you don't get me. And a lot of people don't. And he said, when it comes to emotions, whether it's sadness or happiness or, name the emotion, he's like, I just find something to do. I go to work. And, then he talked about when he gets in arguments with his wife, how he handles that and plays with chickens and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, I'm sure there's a part of him that's going to be disappointed. But I also believe that I take him at his word that, he talked about being dead inside one year, where it's just burnt wood in his chest. He doesn't feel emotions the way normal people do. He said it enough at this point to where I believe him. I don't think it's going to affect him nearly as much as maybe his players and his, people on his staff might feel a certain emotion about him not being there. I think he knows what he's contributed to this program. He knows, his handprints and fingerprints are all over it. And I think if he's not able to be there, he'll be 5 inches away from the TV rooting him on. And once they get that milestone, I think he'll be just as happy as, he would have been if he was able to be there in person. It is going to be interesting, even if he is suspended, because his brother John was asked about this. Baltimore Ravens, they've got the Thursday night game against the Bengals. You know, John was asked, like, if Jim can't watch it, like, are you guys going to watch the game together? You know, you're out in Baltimore, the Maryland area. Are you guys going to link up and watch the game together? And John sort of smiled and said, we need to get through Thursday first. And so I do think that Jim's going to make the trip with the team, regardless of whether or not he's able to coach. I think he'll be out there in Maryland. And once they get that win, I think they'll meet up with Jim pretty quickly and they'll celebrate appropriately.
Is there a rule? Can John Harbaugh be on the sidelines and help coach that game?
You know what? I don't know about that, but I love what Lucas Hicks just suggested. Can Fox get a Harbaugh cam like in the hotel room so that we can just get a visual of Jim Harbaugh as he's watching the game? Like, the Big Ten can't do shit about that. And that you talk about like incredible TV, Jim Harbaugh sitting in a hotel room with his brother, like kind of like if I could do a live podcast like the Manning brothers do, it would be incredible. Just incredible.
Do you think Harbaugh would go for that?
I think he's crazy enough to go for it. Yes. I think it would be a giant middle finger to the Big Ten Conference. If Fox said,
somebody get it going.
We know you're going to be in your hotel room. We want to put a camera in there. We want to be able to interview you at halftime. We want to be able to ask you questions about the game. I think Jim Harbaugh would be sign me up. Let's do it.
Chris, get a hold of that guy that you had an interaction with at the Big Ten title game. Tell him to start pulling some strings.
Just to make it clear, I have not forgotten about that guy. And if Michigan, if and when they are at the Big Ten championship game, I swear to God, I'll be down in the field looking for him. I've been waiting a whole year for retribution and revenge. I'll find you. I'll find you. It's fine. I'll find you. I have not forgotten.
Jesse Pop, this is a fun fact, man. The Roman numeral for the number 1000 is the letter M. How about that, dude? That's cool.
And the Roman numeral for 1001, from what I've been told, is MI. So
yeah, there you go. M1. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. So there's some shirt ideas there. I feel like 1000, the M, the W, that's pretty cool. All right, so. I agree. It's a big win. Hopefully Harbaugh can be there. If not, let's get a camera on him. I like where Chris's head is at on that one. Maybe you can head that up, dude.
Maybe. Well, maybe I'll just go watch the game with him.
Anything for the shot, Coach. Do you remember when we shared that moment?
Anything for the shot. Just me and Jim Harbaugh in a swimming pool on Mackinac Island. Just good vibes, man. Good vibes, good times.
CJ, I do have
some of the best advice I've ever gotten as a photographer came from Jim Harbaugh himself in a pool at Mackinac Island. How incredible is that?
Anything for the shot. There you go.
Anything for the shot. You want me to go down again? You want me to go down head first?
Awesome.
Yeah, Jim, I do. Please.
That was pretty awesome. All right, what you got? How many you got left, Chris? I think we're on 3 or 4 here.
Okay. Totally forgot it was my turn. Let's turn to Maryland a little bit, talk about that football game. Michigan, again, expected to be a big win. I've seen it between 19.5, 21 points, but Michigan's a big favorite. We'll just put it that way. Road contest. What is your biggest concern about Maryland going into the weekend?
I mean, they do. I'll tell you what, any concerns that I had for them fluttered right away when Penn State beat them 51-15. And then you saw how Michigan was able to stifle Penn State. Like, watching that game, I'm like, how the hell did they score 51 against any? I don't know if they could do that against air. Like, I would think like Aller would miss enough throws for them to not score 51 points against no defense. So Talia Tagovailoa is talented, but he's also a little reckless. Michigan has picked him off before. DJ Turner had the pick 6 against him a couple seasons ago, or last season, whenever that was. I think it was 2 seasons ago, because that was also in Maryland. But he's played a lot of football. He does have a big arm. He's similar to JJ in a way that he's done a good enough athlete to get outside the pocket, make throws off schedule, different arm angles and on the run, and still be pretty accurate. But he's also a little more careless. They're not playing for nearly as much, so I do anticipate some turnovers from him. And they do have some skill and some speed in their receiving core and their skill position players, but they're nowhere near as physical as Michigan. I feel like Michigan's going to beat them up in the trenches bad, and like I said, turn them over. So I would pick Michigan to cover the spread pretty easily this week. I mean, is Maryland much better than Minnesota or Michigan State or Nebraska or Purdue? And Michigan beat Purdue by 18. But no, I think Michigan will be able to do pretty much whatever they want, and we'll cover that spread, and these scores will look like a lot of the other ones earlier this year. So my only concern is that if Tagovailoa just somehow plays out of his absolute gourd for the entire 60 minutes of the game, and it's just not going to happen. So I don't have much of a concern at all.
Yeah, I mean, Tagovailoa is certainly a concern. We saw, I mean, hell, even Drew Aller was able to get off a couple of big runs and keep some drives alive against Michigan. It didn't really matter much in the end. Tagovailoa, obviously a much better athlete. Another thing that Mike Elston talked about today is making sure that, Michigan it hits their assignments appropriately, doesn't get out of sorts, and keep Tagovailoa in your sights. But at the end of the day, to me, the biggest concern is injury. I think Michigan's going to win the game. But you got Ohio State coming up the following week. I think you got to make sure that you get through that game injury-free. I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw through the first, 6-7 weeks of the season, where you see the Michigan starters for like the first 2.5, 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter belongs to Jack Tuttle and, a lot of the second and third string guys. And I think that's really my biggest concern. And especially with JJ kind of hobbling around last week. Yeah. Last weekend, which was not even kind of like significant hobble. Saw it against Indiana. He mentioned it early in the season. I think that ankle has been an ongoing issue for him for a bulk of the season here. You just want to make sure that you get everybody healthy because you're absolutely going to need every single ounce of what you got. Look, I know this Ohio State team for a fact is not as good as the Buckeye team that Michigan faced last year or the year before. I know that. But I also know that Ohio State is going to come in heavily motivated to Ann Arbor on November 25th, which, fun little side note, it's Blake Corum's birthday, by the way. His last game in the Big House, his birthday. Just maybe think about that going into the game.
3 tutties.
Yes, the Buckeyes will be highly motivated. They are definitely bringing their Block O flag with every intention of planting it at the 50-yard line. And I think Michigan's going to need everybody healthy and ready to go for that game in order to do what I think they will ultimately do. So for me, the biggest concern is injury. Just get everybody out of there healthy, get the W, get to 1,000, get back to Ann Arbor, get ready for Ohio State.
There you have it. My last one, also talking about the upcoming game on Saturday on the road, maybe again without Jim Harbaugh. Maybe JJ is a little bit dinged up. Maybe. A lot of things, a lot of moving parts right now. There's a lot of things we don't know about for sure for Saturday's game, and that's why I'm not really sure how to answer this question. Chris, what are we going to see? Is it going to be another run the ball 20 times in a row type of thing? JJ throws it 10 times, or is it going to look normal where JJ's winging it 20, 25, maybe 30 times because they can do whatever they want? Big game for Roman Wilson, big game for Colston Loveland, or is it going to look again like something we haven't really seen yet? Where I don't even know. I mean, like I was asked this question. I had no idea how to answer it. I don't know what we're going to see. After watching them do what they did against Penn State, I feel really lost about the approach, given what looms the week after, too. Like, all these things factor in.
Well, I actually agree, and I think that's what makes Michigan so great, is we don't know what we're going to see. And if you're trying to scout this team and you're watching film, how do you scout them? How do you scout 32 straight wins? How do you scout... We could see that. We could see JJ drop back and throw it 40 times. We don't know what we're going to get until you get into the game. And then by that time, it's too late because you're already playing the style of football that Michigan wants you to play on that any given afternoon. So I personally think we're going to see a return back to somewhat normal where it's a little more balanced. But what you just said is, I think what makes Michigan so dangerous is even people who cover the team, who watch every single snap of every single game going into this weekend, no idea what it's going to look like offensively because Michigan they'll do whatever they need to do based on the circumstances. And I think that's why they're going to win this weekend. I think it's why they're going to win the following weekend. I think it's why they're going to win their 3rd straight Big Ten championship. It's why I think they're going to win the college football playoff semifinal and why I think they're going to win a national championship this year. They just do what needs to be done to get the job done.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it'll be a return to a more balanced approach. I don't know. If JJ is a little bit banged up, they're not going to push him. So it might not be a 30-throw day. He might not run it that much, but I think it's going to be closer to that because what you just said is so true. I mean, like, vacate the middle and protect the perimeter. Well, here's Colston Loveland and Barner all day. Well, stack the middle a little bit so we don't give up these easy crossers. Well, Roman Wilson on a single safety, whatever, single corner outside. And, by the way, we do have these 2 running backs back here behind the Joe Moore semifinalist offensive line yet again. I don't think they're going to win it for a third year in a row, but they're being recognized again as doing a damn good job. And last week certainly shown that, especially running the ball. So it's crazy. You're right. It's crazy that like, does that mean this team doesn't have an identity, or is their identity that they can do whatever the hell they want to win?
That's the identity. That's the identity.
Yep. Some teams can't, like if somehow, like for instance, if somehow you said like a team is going to go in and take away the passing game from Michael Penix in Washington, would they be able to win a game by running the ball 20 times?
32 straight times?
Yeah, 32 in a row if you want to go to the complete extreme. If they're going to have to run it 10 times for every 2 passes or something. I'm just throwing a random example out there. But Michigan can. They just did it against the best team they've played all year. They have no other games that look like that one on Saturday. None. And they went in there and did that against the best rush defense they faced all year and got a pretty one-sided win. You're right. How do you scout them? Pick a game, put the tape on. Damn it. Look, they did something here. Next game, damn it, something else. Penn State game, what in the hell is this Army? What is this? It's hard to handle. It's hard to handle. Yeah.
Good luck, Mike Loxley and Josh Gaddis and the rest of the crew out there in Maryland.
Gaddis, how about that, dude?
How about that matchup? A little throwback to Josh Gaddis. For some odd reason, I've got 2 questions left. So
I smushed the 1,000-win one into yours.
These should be relatively short, but I'm going to ask them both. The first one I'm going to ask is, based on everything that we've just talked about. Actually, let me ask this one first, because I feel like what I was going to ask would be a good way to end it.
All right.
Saw him today at the press conference. Obviously, what he did, at Penn State, you find out just hours before the game, Jim Harbaugh is not going to be available. You step into the role once again. We have seen it time and time again from Sherrone Moore, whether it's starting out as the tight ends coach, moving to the offensive line, co-OC, full-time OC, acting head coach, whatever he touches gets better as a result. Is there a chance that Sherrone Moore is still coaching in Ann Arbor next year?
Maybe if it's as head coach. He's not going to be the OC or the O-line coach. I can tell you that. There's just no way.
Maybe I'll rephrase it. Is there any chance Sherrone Moore is not a head coach next year?
No, because he's not going to leave for another OC job. That would be a lateral or a backwards move. I mean, so that's not going to happen. It's going to be for a head coaching job. And if I didn't know any better, I'd think Jim Harbaugh wanted him to leave. He sells him so hard because of how much he believes in him and how good he thinks he is. It's almost sometimes I want to be like, Coach, like, don't say that, dude. Like, but it's inevitable. He's really good. He's in his mid to late 30s. He's been billed as a phenomenal recruiter. He now kind of he had like a moment, like his own special coming to the, national scene moment with that speech after the game. And obviously he's been the acting head coach during all this stuff that everybody's paying attention to. I mean, I don't know if I've ever heard his name mentioned on TV before ever. And I've heard it a ton this week. So, that it's almost like the Heisman thing, like a guy starts to get built up, and then, he wins. It's like Sherrone Moore is kind of dealing with that right now, which could propel him into a head coaching job. Not that he's not deserving, but I think it could speed it up even a little bit more. And again, Jim Harbaugh has been going to bat for him about I've got 4 guys who will probably be a head coach next year, and Sherrone's the most likely of all of them. He has pulled no punches saying stuff like that. So I'll be shocked if he's not a head coach somewhere next year. Absolutely shocked.
First of all, let me see that. CJ, I'm just going to address this right away. If he goes to Michigan State, Sherrone Moore is dead to me. I'm just going to put that out there. If he goes to East Lansing, take back everything I just said about Sherrone Moore and, the work he's done in Ann Arbor. But I will say there are definitely some college football head coaching jobs that are going to open up. And rephrasing that question to whether or not he'll be a head coach next year, I absolutely think he's going to be a head coach next year. I'm not trying to open up the will Harbaugh go, will he be back sort of rumors, will the NCAA thing in the Big Ten, push him out. What I'm saying is Sherrone Moore will be a head coach next year. Maybe that's at the University of Michigan. Maybe it's somewhere else. But he has paid his dues. He has climbed up the ranks at the University of Michigan. And like I said, everything he touches just seems to get better as a result. Mike Elston talked about it a little bit today when he was asked to describe Sherrone Moore as a person. And I think it's just something, even from the outside, you can tell people just like him. Likable guy. Players love him. The other coaches love him. He's really damn good at what he does. He can clearly adjust to any situation that's thrown his way, even under the toughest circumstances. I think he's earned the right to be a head coach, and I think he will be a head coach next year. But again, just tread lightly, Sherrone, because if you go to Michigan State, all bets are off.
You
will not be forgiven.
You wonder about that because he's not like a Michigan or a Midwest guy at his roots. And so
nobody wants that a dumpster fire.
I know, but they paid $95 million for a guy who didn't deserve half of it. So money talks, bruh. Money talks. Sure that
I would turn down $95 million to coach Michigan State at this point.
I certainly would not. And I
just said I'm not sure. I would let me just refer. I would definitely not turn down $95 million to coach Michigan State.
Yeah. Wolf Gamer, quick donation for us. Appreciate that. Specific question here about Drew Aller and Penn State. What in that game showed us that Drew Aller has the talent for his position? I mean, he's a big body dude. He's a plus athlete. You saw him start to run the ball pretty effectively. Obviously, he did fumble. He's got a really strong arm. Obviously, the offensive coordinator wasn't doing a good job, or he wouldn't have been fired. It wasn't. I mean, that game might have been the tipping point, but he obviously wasn't doing a whole lot with him all year. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like the same thing you see, like a guy get drafted to the NFL and just go to a horrible situation. It just might not be a great situation for his skill set or what he's good at or what he's not good at. I mean, you could say whatever you want about Joe Milton at this point. He's been better at Tennessee than he was at Michigan. You know, I mean, like it just a change. He's not been great, but my point is, you change the scenery, you change the system, you change your approach, your weapons.
Brandon, he can throw an orange 100 yards.
He's got a big arm. I mean, Drew Aller's got a big arm too, but that doesn't always make you a great quarterback. And I think we're kind of seeing that. Sean Bennett, also thank you. How good? Well, let's come back to let's close with that. Chris, I know you've got one more question, I think. Yeah. And this is a good one to kind of get us looking forward. So Sean, we will come back to your question.
We will definitely come back to it. This is kind of in similar territory here, but now we've seen 2 editions of the college football playoff rankings come out. Michigan remains at number 3 in both. Ohio State was number 1 to open, have dropped to number 2, and you got Georgia back up at number 1 in the latest rankings. We've seen enough now of college football and these various teams around the country to have a general sense of who's what at this point. And when it comes to Michigan specifically, you can't say they haven't played anybody now. So that narrative's dead. They played and beat Penn State in their own building last weekend. Do you think Michigan is the best team in the country right now? Yes. Is it too soon to tell? No. Where do you stand on that?
I do think Georgia's better now. They've got Brock Bowers back. That makes them a lot better, and they were pretty damn impressive this past weekend. And they're back up there at number 1. I don't think Ohio State's as good as Michigan, even though they're ahead of them in the rankings right now. I mean, Michigan's certainly got the edge at quarterback, and I think that means a whole hell of a lot when you come down to this part of the season and you got to get wins in big moments. I'd probably give JJ the edge over Carson Beck too, even though he's been better and he's dealing it to Brock Bowers, to some of the other weapons at Georgia. Yeah, damn it. They're the best team in the country. They are. They're the best team in the country. They can beat you in a multitude of ways. They've got the best defense. They adjust better than anybody else. Yes, Michigan is the best team in the country, regardless of what number's next to their name.
Yeah, I know it's going to sound very homerish given what we do and who we cover and where we live and where we reside. But I think Michigan is the best team in the country. And I think a lot of my belief in that is based on what we saw on Saturday. I have yet to see another team around the country decide to go one-dimensional intentionally and be able to dominate a top 10 opponent. I saw Michigan do that last weekend. Mm-hmm. And to me, what that said, and I feel like a broken record at this point, but what it said to me was this Michigan team just knows how to adjust in game. They are going into game 11 and have yet to give up a point in the third quarter. They know how to make adjustments. They know how to play the opponent that's in front of them. They know how to sucker you into playing their style of football, and they always come out on top as a result. And so I haven't seen another team be able to do what Michigan's done. We talked about it before. How do you game plan for them? What are we going to see on Saturday? No idea. No idea. And that's a credit to who Michigan is and what they're all about. So for me, you take all the respect in the world to Georgia, 2-time national champions. You got to give them the respect that they deserve. But you put Michigan in a Final Four with Georgia, Florida State, and Ohio State. I love Michigan's odds.
Yeah.
Best team in the country.
It's funny, dude, when you think about what Michigan did on Saturday and who they did it against and where at, and without a head coach. It reminds me of, and Chris, I don't remember if you said you played much when you were younger, but in Madden, maybe in college games too, but definitely in Madden, they had like these scenarios that you had to complete to like earn coins or VC or whatever the hell they called it back then, where it was like, you're down 10 with a minute and a half to go win the game. I would love to see like Georgia, Bama, Texas. There's 7 minutes left in the second quarter. You're not allowed to throw a pass the rest of the day. Win the game.
Yep.
Dude, that's an incredible task to try to overcome. And Michigan did it because they knew it was a combination. Yeah, Penn State's offense, not that great. That's not Washington you're playing over there. That's not even Bama. Bama's offense has looked really good with Milroe kind of developing and coming into his own, and I get it. But for Michigan to take on a team like that and not throw a pass from the 7.5 minute mark or whatever it was in the second quarter for the rest of the game, move the ball enough, eat enough time off the clock, and control the game on defense to where Penn State's offense couldn't even score, incredible. And I don't know if there's another team in the country that could do that. Now, that's not like the be all end all. Like if your team can't do that, you can't win a title. That's not what I'm saying. But for Michigan to be able to do that, I think speaks to what you said. You haven't seen another team go one-dimensional by choice and do something like that and be so versatile and be able to adjust whatever the other team is doing and get a win. I think it's incredible. It was boring, but it was incredible. And it wasn't even that boring because Blake had a big run. Donovan had a big run.
I didn't even feel bored on Saturday. Like I felt very you know what? I guess it was if that's what we saw against a team like Bowling Green or UNLV, that would have been boring. But the fact that it was in Happy Valley, in Beaver Stadium against a top 10 team, all of that anxiety and nervousness I felt before the game, like I just felt calm. I felt relaxed, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the comfort that came from being in that building, knowing that Michigan was in full control for 2.5 quarters.
This is a phenomenal point. Quiet. I don't know, but I just did the Tony Romo thing right there. God damn it, that was bad. Mikey Sainer still keeping Brock Bowers quiet. If anybody can do it, it's Mikey. I'll give him that. Somebody that can run with him, that's not going to get lost in the wash, that's going to be in the right place at the right time, make some key clutch plays. Mikey Sainer still, that's all he's made out of is all that stuff. And so that's a phenomenal matchup that I would love to watch. Great question here from Penny. And Chris, we talked about this. Can we? Is this something we can actually do? Be at the courthouse. Can Chris and I be at the courthouse on Friday, sitting in the audience like a Judge Judy episode?
I mean, I can tell you I'm going to be there. Whether or not they'll let me in is another story. But I'm going to attempt to be there, yes.
Well, dude. That would be incredible. But I actually didn't hear this. You saying it was the first time I heard it. Harbaugh might not be there in person. That's
what I've been told?
Yes.
Yes. So it's what I've been told is that I was trying to get information about specifics of where it was going to be, when it was going to be, all that stuff, and that was what was relayed to me. And I think that would. No, I'm not going to wear a suit. I'm going to show up in sweatpants, shorts, a sweatshirt, and my backwards hat, and some Nikes, and just chill there in the back and see if I can get some video. But yeah, that was what was relayed to me, is that there's a chance he might not be there. I mean, if you think about it, he doesn't need to be there. Like, there's no reason for him to be there. But based on what he said on Friday, it really sounds like, maybe I'll show up with my Ray-Bans.
Did you say you were going to try to capture some video, Chris? Is that what you said?
Maybe I'll hire I think I know a guy who's pretty good at getting some video without getting caught. Wait a minute. Damn it.
He did get caught.
He did get caught, didn't he? But yeah, I mean, there's based on the way that Harbaugh was talking on Monday, it certainly sounded like he had every intention of being in that courtroom and being able to speak. You know, he said, "I'm not going to speak now. I'm going to save it for Friday and say what I have to say on Friday." So, you know, we'll see what happens, but certainly going to try to be there and see, you know, what plays out in court. And I mean, just the fact that Michigan is going to be in court, you know, fighting it out with the Big Ten Conference. We've never seen anything like this, and yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll sketch what I'm seeing in there. I'll do some quick doodles, and then I'll send those out.
I just had a hilarious vision of like after the press conference on Monday, like Dave Abloff grabs Harbaugh and he's like, "Jim, you're not going," and he's like, after he was up there, like, "I want to like yell at the jury like Tom Cruise,"
Listen,
or I want to.
If Jim Harbaugh wants to be in that courtroom on Friday, he'll be in there. Nobody's going to tell him.
So he's like allowed to, right? It's not an allowance thing. It's just like
they're representing him. They're there on his behalf. He can certainly be there. There's no question.
Yeah, so funny, man.
But then also, you know, when is the team flying out? How, you know, all of that shit, the logistics of everything. But I certainly think, look, he's spent a lot of time not saying what he wants to say and biting his tongue and deferring back to, you know, there's an ongoing investigation. I can't say anything. He shows up to court, anything and everything he's wanted to say from the very beginning about all of this. That is the most perfect opportunity for him to be able to say it. And so to pass on that, I'd be surprised. But again, like, I don't know, at the end of the day, bigger fish to fry, a team to coach, a game to get ready for. We'll see. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean,
it's a perfect snapshot of everything that's been going on since this entire saga began. Is who the hell knows anything is possible? Jim Harbaugh could literally show up on Friday, represent himself, and scream at a wall like he's talking to a jury.
John Patrick may have nailed it. The lawyers may have said, "Jim, don't be there. Please don't be there. We can handle this on our own. It would be better off if you were not."
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, but again, you're not like, I don't think he's going to say anything incriminating. Like, for as much shit as we give him,
Harbaugh,
he's a pretty smart dude. He's a really good speaker, very passionate guy. And we've talked about this before. When he walks into a room, like,
there's a presence.
I don't want to say, look, we have assistant coaches come out to these press conferences. We have some players come out to some guys have a presence and some guys just don't. And when Jim Harbaugh walks into a room, everybody's aware of it. He has a presence. And so I can't imagine that being in that room would hurt his chances. But yes, if he goes off on a tangent about chickens, could throw a wrench into things.
I mean, reportedly, maybe he should have had someone go on his behalf for the Minnesota interview. Like he went out there, had the job, spent some time. People like, we're good on that dude. Yeah, we're not going to hire him. I mean, that, like, if you believe that's how it went down, that's reportedly what happened. But I don't know. I love the idea of him being able to talk on his own behalf in the courtroom. Chris made a lot of really good points. He's had to button it up and say, the company line 100 times, and that would be his first time to just let it fly. And if it's really the truth, like he says it is, then you can't really screw it up either.
That's the thing. When you're telling the truth, when you're not lying, it's not really hard to be on point.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's not really a risk of saying anything that could incriminate yourself.
And if you believe him, what he said, every time he's had the opportunity to say something, he is telling the truth. And so maybe, I don't know. I am curious to see how it goes, to see what kind of information comes out from it. And ultimately the ruling, because that's going to determine whether Harbaugh is out there for win number 1,000 or not. So there you go. There you go. Friday. I mean, the plan. Okay, well, the plan is to do a show Friday, right, Chris? Travel is early morning Saturday. The courthouse. Hey, right? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, so probably be able to do a Friday night show. I fly out early Saturday morning, get to Maryland, go straight to the game from the airport, and then back on Sunday. So I would say, yeah. Show on Friday is pretty likely.
Friday night should work. If something changes, we'll let you know. Maybe I don't know. We'll see what happens on Saturday for post game stuff like that. But yeah, Friday should be Friday night at 7:00. If not, we'll let you know. Another great audience, man. Again, I mean, some of the numbers we've been pulling in on these last few shows. I mean, for obvious reasons, they've been big ones. But we really, really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching us live for an hour. It's not lost on us for sure. We really appreciate that. Friday night, 7:00.